The sound hit first. It was not a cheer. It was not a scream. It was something stranger, thousands of alien voices rumbling together in a single wave, rising and falling like a storm. The Colosseum shook with it, its walls glowing with alien lights, banners of strange worlds hanging from towers. In the center, under a sky blackened with smoke, the sand pit waited. And into that pit, the humans were thrown. Elias Kane hit the ground hard, his ribs already cracked from the journey here. He had once been a soldier back on Earth, trained to fight, trained to endure. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this. Not the vast alien arena. Not the eyes of creatures from 100 worlds staring down at him like he was an insect. Not the laughter that followed. The aliens filled the seats like kings at a feast. Some were armored giants with tusks and glowing eyes. Others were small, insect-like, their mandibles clicking as they placed bets. Holographic boards flashed with alien currency, counting down odds, human survival, 3 minutes. Human death, guaranteed. They laughed as Elias tried to rise. His chest burned, every breath stabbing into him like a knife. His uniform was torn, stained with blood. Behind him, 2 more humans groaned in pain, one clutching a broken arm, the other barely conscious. To the aliens, this was entertainment. To Elias, it was humiliation. A booming voice echoed through the Colosseum, translated into 100 tongues. Behold the weak ones. The fragile earthborn. The crowd roared, stamping their feet, shaking the arena floor. They wanted blood. From a great gate of steel, the first challenger entered. A warrior twice the size of a man, skin plated like armor, carrying a jagged blade taller than Elias himself. The alien roared, and the crowd roared with it. Elias forced himself to stand, his body trembling. His ribs were broken, his left arm barely responsive, but he refused to kneel. He locked eyes on the giant warrior and thought, not like this. Not kneeling. The warrior moved fast, too fast for something so large. The blade came down, smashing into Elias's side. Bones snapped. His body twisted and hit the sand with a sickening crack. The crowd erupted in laughter, their voices sharp, cruel. "He will not last a minute," one alien shouted. "See how they fall. So soft, so weak," another jeered. Elias lay there, vision blurry, pain flooding him like fire. His chest collapsed with each desperate gasp. His mind screamed at him to let go, to stop fighting, to sink into the blackness pulling at the edges of his sight. Above him, the alien warrior lifted the blade again, ready to deliver the final blow. The crowd leaned forward, eager for the end. And then, something changed. It began with a twitch in his fingers. Then a strange warmth spread through his chest. His ribs shifted, bones grinding as if pulled by invisible hands. The pain was sharp, unbearable, then suddenly, gone. He felt air rush into his lungs again. His chest rose. His wounds closed. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. The alien warrior froze mid-strike, staring down in disbelief. The crowd went silent, confusion replacing laughter. Elias pressed a hand to his side. The broken ribs were no longer broken. He coughed, spitting blood into the sand, then pushed himself up, shaky but alive. His eyes burned with defiance as he stood facing the warrior once more. The silence stretched across the Colosseum like a suffocating blanket. Then whispers began. "Impossible. He should be dead. No creature heals like that." The alien warrior snarled, enraged. He swung the massive blade again, this time slicing across Elias's leg. The bone shattered, blood poured out, and Elias collapsed with a cry. The crowd cheered in relief, desperate to believe it was over. But it wasn't. Before their eyes, his leg began to mend. The muscle stitched itself, the bone realigned, skin sealing as though time itself reversed. Within moments, Elias was pushing himself upright again, leaning heavily on the sand but refusing to fall. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Fear crept into their voices. "What are they? They should not survive this. This is wrong." The alien warrior hesitated now, his blade trembling. He struck again, again. Each time Elias fell, each time he rose again, slower, weaker, but unbroken. Blood soaked the sand, but no wound stayed open for long. Elias's eyes, once clouded with pain, now glowed with a cold fire. He looked at the warrior, then up at the thousands of aliens watching him. His voice was hoarse, but it carried in the silence. "You call us weak." The stadium froze. Elias straightened his back, blood still dripping but wounds closing as he spoke. "You think we break easy. You think pain will stop us. You think death is the end." The warrior stepped back, uncertainty in his eyes. The crowd that once roared now sat in horrified silence. Elias clenched his fists, feeling strength return where none should remain. "But you don't understand. We are human. We endure. We rise." And as he stood, his body broken and mended, bloodied but alive, the Colosseum fell into a silence so deep it was heavier than the loudest cheer. For the first time, the galaxy saw what humans truly were. Not weak, not fragile, but unyielding. And in that silence, one thought spread across the arena, whispered in 100 alien tongues. If one of them can do this, what happens when there are billions? The silence did not last. From the high seats of the Colosseum, the alien nobles and warlords leaned forward, their jeweled eyes wide. They had expected a quick death. They had expected the soft earth creature to collapse like wet paper. Instead, they had seen him rise again and again, wounds vanishing as if time itself obeyed his will. The crowd's laughter had died. Now, a low murmur rippled through the stands. Not joy, not anger, fear. The announcer's booming voice faltered. The translation systems buzzed as the words struggled to form. This cannot be. He should be. The warrior in the pit snarled, refusing to believe. His jagged blade, dripping with Elias's blood, rose once more. The crowd, desperate to see the old order restored, roared for him to strike again. Elias braced himself. His chest still heaved with exhaustion, his muscles trembling from the repeated blows. The regeneration had saved him, but it did not make him untouchable. Every wound left behind pain, every strike stole energy. He knew he couldn't last forever. The warrior lunged, blade swinging with brutal force. Elias couldn't dodge in time. The weapon tore across his shoulder, cutting deep. He staggered, nearly falling. Blood streamed down his arm. The aliens cheered, relieved, comforted by the sight. But then, before their eyes, the torn flesh began to close. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. The wound stitched itself shut in seconds. The cheers twisted into silence again. The warrior's eyes widened. He stepped back, lowering the blade. For the first time in his life, he feared prey. Elias saw it. That hesitation. That disbelief. He clenched his jaw, wiped the blood from his mouth, and forced his broken body to stand taller. "You don't get it, do you?" he muttered, voice rough but steady. The warrior bared his teeth and roared, swinging the blade again in blind rage. Elias raised his arms, too slow to block. The weapon crashed into his ribs, shattering them once more. He collapsed in the sand, coughing blood, his vision fading. The crowd exploded in cheers, desperate to believe it was finally over. But once again, it wasn't. The cracking bones shifted back into place. The broken ribs mended themselves. His chest rose again with breath. Slowly, painfully, Elias pushed himself to his knees, then to his feet. The Colosseum froze. A cold dread fell across the thousands of alien faces. "He cannot die," one whispered. "Nothing heals that fast. This is no soldier. This is a monster." The warrior backed away, eyes wide, blade trembling. For the first time, the crowd booed their own champion. Not out of anger at him, but out of fear of the human standing before him. Elias spat blood onto the sand and stared at the giant with eyes that no longer held fear. Only defiance. The warrior roared, trying to shake his terror, and charged again. The blade swung high, but Elias ducked under it and drove his shoulder into the alien's chest. The crowd gasped. The human, broken and bloodied, had not only survived, but fought back. The warrior stumbled. Rage burned in his alien eyes. He raised the blade for one final strike. Elias knew he couldn't match the strength. He couldn't block the weapon. But he didn't need to. He needed only to stand. The blade came down, slicing deep across his side. The pain was unbearable. His legs buckled. Darkness pressed against his mind. But even as he fell, he smiled through bloodied teeth. Because he knew. He knew what was coming. The wound sealed. The flesh knitted. His body rose again. The warrior's roar turned into a scream, not of rage, but of terror. He dropped the blade, stepping back, shaking his head. Impossible, impossible! The Colosseum erupted, not with cheers, but with chaos. Some aliens fled their seats. Others shouted in panic. The nobles argued, their voices trembling. What have we brought here? This is no entertainment. This is a threat. Humans cannot be allowed to spread. Down in the pit, Elias stood tall once more, chest heaving, body mended. His voice echoed, hoarse but filled with iron. You thought we were weak. You thought this was a game. He turned his gaze upward, to the sea of horrified alien faces. Now you see the truth. Silence. Then a single whisper, spoken by thousands of voices at once. Unkillable. The warrior, trembling, dropped to his knees before Elias. The crowd, once so loud, sat in terrified silence, staring down at the human who refused to die. For the first time in the galaxy's history, the predators wondered if they had made a mistake mocking prey. And in the shadows of the high stands, alien generals leaned to one another and whispered the words no one dared say aloud. If one of them is like this, what happens when billions come? The Colosseum had become too dangerous. What began as sport had turned into panic. Whispers of unkillable spread faster than wildfire across the alien city. Soldiers with shock rifles swarmed the arena, pushing back the crowd, while the nobles argued among themselves. Some demanded Elias's immediate execution. Others wanted him studied, dissected, understood. The generals made the decision quickly. Humans would not be left in the pit. They were to be taken, alive, to the laboratories. Elias and the other surviving prisoners were dragged from the arena. His body still ached, blood dried on his skin, but his wounds had already closed. The aliens bound him in chains thicker than his arms, though he had no strength left to resist. His eyes, however, never lowered. Through corridors of steel, past doors that hissed with alien technology, Elias was brought into a chamber filled with strange machines. The walls hummed. Glass tanks bubbled with fluids that glowed an eerie green. Within them floated alien creatures, dissected and studied. The scientists arrived. They were not like the warriors or nobles. These were thin, gray-skinned beings with large, glassy eyes, their long fingers twitching as they scribbled data across glowing slates. They spoke in hurried whispers, voices sharp with excitement. Unprecedented regeneration. No recorded species repairs tissue this fast. Impossible biology. We must cut deeper. Elias was strapped onto a metal slab. Cold restraints locked around his wrists and ankles. The chains rattled as he struggled, but it was no use. Dozens of alien instruments hovered over him, blades gleaming, scanners humming. One of the scientists leaned close, its eyes glowing faintly. Its voice carried no pity, only fascination. You should be dead. Yet you stand. Why? Elias spat at the floor. His throat was raw, his words broken. Because we don't quit. The scientist tilted its head, unimpressed. Then let us see how much you endure. The blades cut. Elias cried out as sharp instruments sliced into his arm. The pain was blinding, tearing through muscle and bone. Blood spilled across the table. The scientists leaned forward eagerly, recording every detail. But even as the blade pulled away, the wound began to close. The flesh knitted. The blood flow slowed. Within minutes, the cut was nothing but a faint scar. The scientists hissed in awe. Extraordinary. Healed already. Accelerated cell growth. But how? They cut deeper. Removed an organ. His vision swam as he felt them tear something from his chest. The agony almost drove him unconscious. They placed the bloody organ into a glass container, studying it as if it were treasure. Elias gasped, his body convulsing. His heart thundered, blood flooding his chest cavity. He thought this time it would be the end. But then, New tissue began forming. The missing organ started to regenerate. Slowly, agonizingly, his body replaced what was stolen. The scientists froze, their voices trembling with disbelief. He regrows what we take. This is no healing. This is creation. If this spreads, they will become unstoppable. One scientist turned, its voice sharp with fear. We must warn the High Council. The humans cannot be allowed to leave this planet. Another shook its head. No, not yet. Imagine what we could build with this. Armies that never die. Soldiers who cannot be broken. Humanity must be contained, controlled, harvested. The chamber fell into silence as Elias lay bound, body shaking but alive. His skin was pale, sweat dripping, but his eyes opened again. He looked at the gray scientist leaning over him. You think you control us, he rasped. The alien blinked, puzzled. You are nothing but an experiment. Elias smiled weakly through blood-stained lips. Experiments, fight back. The scientists recoiled. For a moment, unease flickered across their faces. Elsewhere in the facility, the other human prisoners were also being tested. Some screamed. Some cried. But slowly, shockingly, the same patterns appeared. A woman whose spine had been crushed stood again. A man whose lungs had been torn open was breathing once more. The scientists realized the truth. It was not just Elias. It was all of them. Every human carried this terrifying resilience, awakened by alien conditions. Under the strange gravity, the foreign air, the endless stress, their biology had evolved, unlocking something hidden for centuries. The scientists gathered in a dark council chamber, their voices low, fearful. If the galaxy learns of this, humans will no longer be mocked. They will be feared. An unkillable species cannot be allowed to expand. But others argued. Imagine the power we could wield if we control them. Entire armies of regenerating humans under our command. With this, no empire could resist us. The debate grew heated. Fear and greed battled in the alien minds. And in the laboratory, strapped and bleeding, Elias heard enough. His mind burned with fury. He realized something with chilling clarity. They no longer mocked humans. They feared them. And that fear would soon lead to something worse than death. The laboratory lights dimmed to a cold blue glow. Elias lay strapped to the metal slab, his body trembling, skin slick with sweat. He had been cut, burned, drained, and yet he still lived. Around him, the alien scientists whispered in frantic tones, their long fingers twitching over data slates. They had seen enough to know the truth. This was not an accident. This was not a single anomaly. Every human in captivity had shown the same terrifying ability. A woman whose skull had been cracked open now walked again. A young man who had drowned in alien fluid had coughed up water and gasped for air minutes later. Bones reformed. Flesh closed. Death itself seemed unable to hold them. The scientists' voices carried through the chamber, sharp and urgent. They should not exist. This is unnatural. No species survives wounds like these. One of the older scientists, its glassy eyes fixed on Elias, spoke with quiet dread. Perhaps it is not unnatural. Perhaps this is evolution. The others stared. The scientist continued. On their homeworld, their regeneration was hidden. Too slow to notice, buried beneath other traits. But here, under alien stars, with pressures their bodies never knew, it awakens fully. Another shook its head. Evolution does not move this fast. Unless, the elder whispered, it was always waiting. The chamber fell silent. Elias heard every word. He clenched his fists against the restraints. They were close to the truth. Closer than most humans ever realized. For humanity's history was written not in triumph, but in survival. Long before space travel, before nations, before even cities, humanity had endured. Ice ages had nearly frozen them to extinction. Plagues had swept across their lands. Wars had bled generations dry. But they had endured, always endured. Pain was not new to humanity. Suffering was not strange. Where other species perished in the face of hardship, humans adapted, bent, and survived. Perhaps the regeneration was not new. Perhaps it was simply the raw expression of that survival, amplified by alien conditions. The scientists did not understand it, but Elias did. Humans had never been the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest, but they had always been the species that refused to break. And now, the galaxy was beginning to see it. Far above the laboratories, the alien generals gathered in a great council hall. Their armor glimmered under the harsh lights, their voices low and grim. "This cannot leave this planet," one growled. "If humans spread, if they bring this ability to the stars, no empire will be safe. They are not warriors. They are something worse, survivors." But others, drunk on ambition, argued. "We could use them. An army that never dies. Imagine what power we could wield." "You fool," a general snapped. "You cannot control what cannot be killed." The chamber shook with their arguments, fear battling greed. At last, a decision was reached. The High Council of the Galaxy would be summoned. Humanity's fate would not be decided by one empire alone. Back in the lab, Elias's restraints clicked open. 2 armored guards yanked him to his feet. His legs buckled, but he refused to fall. The scientists followed, recording every twitch of his body as he was dragged to another chamber, this one filled with alien symbols glowing across the walls. A high-ranking official stood waiting, tall and imposing, its face hidden behind a gleaming mask. "You are dangerous," it said, its voice cold, mechanical through translation. "Your kind should never have left its homeworld." Elias met its gaze, his own eyes burning with quiet fire. "You think we asked for this?" he rasped. "You brought us here. You wanted a show. You laughed at us." The official's silence was answer enough. "You wanted to see weakness," Elias continued, his voice steadier now, "but what you saw was survival. That's who we are. That's what makes us human." The masked figure leaned closer, its tone edged with fear. "If that is true, then humanity is the greatest threat this galaxy has ever known." Word of the discovery spread like a virus. Across alien networks, in hidden whispers, the story traveled. The unkillable species. The regenerating humans. Some called it a myth. Others believed it instantly. On distant planets, alien civilians spoke in hushed voices. "If they cannot die, then they cannot be conquered. If they rise again and again, how do you defeat them?" Elias, chained in the shadows of his cell, smiled grimly. For the first time, he realized what was happening. They weren't just afraid of him. They were afraid of all of humanity. And fear, he knew, was far more powerful than mockery. In the council chambers above, the debate grew darker. Some demanded Earth be destroyed before the humans spread. Others wanted to enslave them, to build eternal armies. But no matter the argument, one truth had already taken root. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. And Elias Kane, broken soldier, prisoner, survivor, was the proof. The cell was dark, lit only by the faint hum of alien machinery. Elias Kane sat with his back against the wall, wrists chained, body bruised but alive. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the cuts, the burns, the agony of being dissected. But every time, he also felt something else, strength. His wounds no longer stayed. His body was adapting faster. He wasn't alone. Across the corridor, other humans were locked in separate cells. A young woman named Mara pressed against the bars, her eyes sharp despite the bruises on her face. A broad-shouldered miner from Earth, Harlan, sat hunched but breathing steadily, his broken leg already healed. Even the weakest of them, an old man who had collapsed during capture, was now standing, his back straighter than it had been in years. They were all changing. Elias lowered his voice so only the humans could hear. "They're afraid of us now. That's why they keep us here, under guard. But fear cuts both ways. If we move together, we can get out." Mara frowned. "You saw their weapons. You saw their warriors. How do we fight that?" Elias gave a faint smile, one without humor. "We don't need to fight like them. We just need to survive long enough to break free. That's what we do best." The chance came sooner than expected. Guards entered the corridor, tall insect-like creatures with shock rifles that hummed with energy. They moved toward Harlan's cell first, unlocking the door. "Another test subject," one hissed. Harlan's jaw clenched. He stepped forward slowly, pretending to stumble. The guard shoved him hard. In that instant, Elias shouted, "Now!" Harlan lunged. The alien fired its rifle, the crack of energy echoing through the hall. Harlan screamed as the blast burned into his chest, but he didn't fall. Smoke rose from the wound, but within seconds the skin began to mend. His arm shot out, grabbing the rifle, twisting it free. The other guards shouted, but Mara shoved her arms through the bars, clawing at one alien's throat. Elias hurled himself against his own restraints, straining until the metal groaned. His bones cracked, muscles tore, but then they healed stronger. With a final wrench, the chains snapped. The cell door burst open. Elias rushed forward, slamming his fist into a guard's face. Bone crunched. The alien staggered back, stunned that the fragile human not only survived the shock collar but fought like a predator. The corridor erupted into chaos. Guards fired wildly, blasts searing across human flesh. Screams echoed, but so did laughter. The humans rose again and again, wounds sealing, blood vanishing. Mara yanked a weapon from a fallen alien and hurled it to Elias. He caught it, the alien rifle heavy but steady in his hands. "Let's show them what weakness looks like," he growled. They moved as a unit, humans from different lives now bound together by survival. The miner, the soldier, the civilian, the young, the old, it didn't matter. None of them stayed down. The aliens fell back in terror. "They won't die! They won't die!" Their voices cracked, echoing down the halls. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. The laboratory base trembled as more soldiers poured in. But fear had already taken root. Some fired only once before retreating. Others dropped their weapons entirely. The humans fought through corridors of steel, past glass tanks where other species floated in silence. Mara shot out a lock, freeing a group of alien prisoners, who scattered in panic, adding to the confusion. Elias led the way, his rifle blazing, his body burning with exhaustion, but every time he thought he couldn't go further, his wounds closed, his strength returned. At last, they reached a hangar bay. The doors hissed open, revealing rows of sleek alien ships glowing with strange energy. Guards were already assembling around them, weapons raised, voices trembling. Elias looked at his people, bloodied, burned, but standing tall. He raised his rifle high. "Today we stop being prey." The humans charged. Energy blasts ripped into them. Mara fell, her chest scorched, but she screamed through the pain and fired back, standing again before the wound even sealed. Harlan smashed through a line of soldiers like a hammer, shrugging off blows that would have shattered bones. Elias fought with grim precision, every movement fueled by rage and survival. One by one, the aliens broke. Fear overwhelmed training. The guards fled, scattering across the hangar. The humans stood victorious among the smoking wreckage. Elias pointed to the largest ship, a dark vessel bristling with weapons. "That's our way out." They sprinted across the hangar, climbing aboard. The controls were strange, glowing with alien symbols, but Mara slid into the pilot's seat, her hands moving quickly. She had been a mechanic on Earth. Machines were still machines. The engines roared to life. As the ship lifted from the hangar floor, the humans gathered at the windows, staring out at the alien city below. For the first time, they were free, not captives, not prey, but something the galaxy would soon learn to fear. Elias stood at the front, blood drying on his skin, his wounds already gone. His voice carried through the cabin. "They wanted to show us as weak. They wanted to laugh while we died. But we don't die easy. We endure. We rise. And now," he pointed to the stars beyond the hangar doors, "we take back our future." The ship blasted into the night sky, fire trailing from its engines. Behind them, alarms screamed across the alien world. Soldiers shouted in panic. The words echoed again and again across the comms. "The humans are loose." The stolen warship cut through the void like a blade, its engines blazing. For the first time since their capture, the humans tasted freedom, not Earth's freedom, but something larger, something terrifying. Elias Kane stood at the viewport, staring out at the stars. Each one seemed brighter now, no longer distant, no longer unreachable. Behind him, the survivors, Mara, Harlan, the others, moved through the alien vessel with growing confidence. They were bruised, bloodied, but alive. Always alive. The ship's comm systems crackled with alien broadcasts. Elias listened as panic spread across the stars. The humans have escaped. They cannot be killed. Containment has failed. Fear traveled faster than light. In a distant alien outpost, soldiers gathered around a holographic display. The feed replayed fragments of the Colosseum, of Elias rising from the sand again and again. Some soldiers laughed nervously, saying it was a trick. Others refused to watch, their mandibles clicking in fear. "What if they come here?" one whispered. "What if they cannot die?" another asked. No one had an answer. On board the stolen ship, Mara sat in the pilot's chair, her eyes locked on the star maps. "We can't go home," she said quietly. "Earth doesn't even know what's coming. If we lead them there, we bring the galaxy's fear with us." Elias nodded. "Then we don't go home. We go forward." "Forward where?" Harlan rumbled. Elias turned, his gaze hard. "To show them we're not prey. To show them the cost of underestimating us." Their first strike was not planned. The ship emerged near a refueling station orbiting a barren moon. Alien ships were docked, their crews laughing, unaware of the storm coming. Elias led the humans aboard with stolen weapons. The guards fired immediately, their blasts cutting through flesh and bone. The humans fell, only to rise again. The aliens screamed. Weapons clattered to the floor. Some tried to fight. Most ran. Within an hour, the station belonged to the humans. Fuel, weapons, supplies, all theirs. Word spread again. "The unkillable ones attack our stations. They fight without fear. You cannot win against those who will not die." Weeks passed. Each battle told the same story. Humans stormed ships, bases, colonies. They were shot, burned, crushed. But always they stood back up. The galaxy had never seen war like this. Armies relied on death as a weapon. But against humans, death was only delay. On one captured transmission, an alien commander shouted in desperation. "They rise again. Shoot them, burn them, it doesn't matter. They keep coming." Another voice replied, trembling. "Then how do we stop them?" The answer came in silence. There was no way. Inside the stolen warship, the humans began to change. Mara no longer flinched when a blast tore through her arm. She simply clenched her jaw and kept fighting, knowing the wound would close. Harlan carried heavy weapons alone, charging into enemy fire with a grin. Even the old man, once frail, now moved like a soldier, scars fading faster each day. They were no longer prisoners. They were becoming legends. Elias felt the weight of it. Every victory spread their name. Every defeat turned into a story of survival. The galaxy had begun to whisper a new title for them. Not humans. Not prey. The unbroken. But Elias also knew the danger. Fear united enemies. Already, empires that had once fought each other were speaking of an alliance against humanity. One evening, as the warship drifted near an asteroid field, Mara asked softly, "Do you think we've gone too far? That maybe we should hide, not fight." Elias stared at the stars, his face grim. "They called us weak. They laughed while they cut us apart. Hiding won't change that. The galaxy won't stop fearing us now. The only choice we have," he turned to her, his eyes burning with iron, "is to make sure they fear us for the right reasons." Mara said nothing, but her hand tightened on the ship's controls. Across alien space, civilians whispered at night. Parents warned their children. "Don't anger the humans. They cannot be killed." On the battlefield, soldiers hesitated before firing. Some even refused to fight, dropping their weapons when they saw humans rise from wounds that should have ended them. And in the highest councils of power, leaders debated furiously. Destroy Earth before it's too late. Exterminate the survivors before more escape. If we fail, the age of humans begins. The galaxy trembled. On board the warship, Elias stood before his people. His voice carried through the corridors, steady and sharp. They mocked us for being weak. They thought pain would break us. They thought death would end us. But now they know the truth. We are the species that endures. The species that rises again and again. We are not prey. The humans cheered, their voices echoing through the ship. Elias raised his fist, his words cutting like steel. We are humanity. We are the unbroken. And this galaxy will never forget us. Fear had spread. The humans were no longer prisoners. They were a storm. And the galaxy, for the first time, feared the rise of Earth. The council chamber was carved from black stone, older than most empires in the galaxy. The leaders of a dozen species sat in a circle, their voices tense, their eyes fixed on the central display. On the hologram, a single human warship drifted through alien space. A stolen vessel. A stolen legend. They spread like fire, hissed one counselor. If we do not act, their kind will consume us all. Consume, another snapped. They are few in number. One ship, a handful of soldiers. Then why, the first demanded, does your army refuse to fight them? Silence. No one could answer. The truth hung heavy in the air. Humans had broken something deeper than flesh. They had broken fear itself. Far away, aboard the warship, Elias Kane stood at the viewport, watching stars streak past. His people moved quietly behind him, eating, resting, repairing weapons. They had grown harder. Their eyes carried a weight they had never borne before. Where to next? Mara asked softly. Elias did not look at her. His gaze was fixed on the stars. Home. Mara frowned. Earth. But the moment we return, the galaxy will follow. We'll bring war to our own people. They'll come anyway, Elias said, his voice steady. Better Earth learns the truth now, before it's too late. Harlan grunted. And what truth is that? Elias finally turned, his face a mask of iron. That humanity is not what we thought we were. The ship cut through the void, approaching a pale blue planet glittering with oceans and clouds. Earth. The cradle of their species. The place the galaxy wanted to burn. As they drew closer, Elias stood before his people once more. Listen to me, he said, his voice echoing through the corridors. The galaxy thinks we are monsters. They think we are a plague that cannot be killed. They fear us because they saw us rise from death. They call us the unbroken. His words hung heavy, but no one spoke. They are right to fear us, Elias continued, because they don't understand what humanity really is. We are not unkillable. We are not immortal. We suffer. We bleed. We die. Mara tilted her head. Then what makes us different? Elias's eyes burned with quiet fire. We endure. That is our power. When we fall, we rise again. When we are broken, we heal. When the universe tells us we cannot go on, humanity goes on anyway. That is what terrifies them. Not that we can't die, but that we refuse to stay dead. The room was silent. Every human there felt the truth of it deep in their bones. On Earth, news of their return spread fast. Families wept at the sight of their lost ones alive again. Governments demanded answers. Armies bristled. And then came the broadcasts. Every channel, every screen, every frequency carried the same image. Elias Kane, standing tall, his body scarred, his eyes sharp as steel. He spoke not only to Earth, but to the galaxy. You thought us weak. You thought us fragile. You thought we would break under your blades and fire. His voice was calm, but every word struck like thunder. You were wrong. Humanity does not break. We do not bow. We do not surrender. You can cut us down 1,000 times, and 1,000 times we will rise again. Because we are not defined by death. We are defined by survival. Behind him, the other humans stood in silence, their very presence proof of his words. You call us monsters. You call us unkillable. But we are only what we have always been. Survivors. Fighters. Humans. He leaned forward, his gaze piercing the lens. And now you will never forget us. Across the stars, Billions watched. Some trembled. Some shouted for war. Others whispered prayers to gods they had abandoned. But one thing united them all. None could ignore humanity any longer. In the council chambers, the alien leaders sat in silence. One finally spoke, her voice hushed. "We thought them prey." Another shook his head slowly. "No. They were never prey. They were the storm that prey fears." And still another whispered the words that would echo across generations. "Not weak. Not fragile. Unbroken." Elias stood at the viewport once more, watching Earth's oceans gleam below. The galaxy was coming for them. He knew it. The battles ahead would be worse than anything they had endured. But he also knew this: humanity would endure those too. He placed his scarred hand against the glass, as if touching the world below. "Let them come," he murmured. Behind him, the humans stood tall, ready. For the first time in history, the galaxy understood the terrifying truth. Death was not the end of humanity. It was only the beginning.